if you go to plan on planting that crop in that field, you're going to find a way to get the seed to do that.
Joining us is Dan Allen, someone who has served more families than most advisors meet in a lifetime. And he didn't just learn the infinite banking concept, he lives it.
Farmers figure out how to do stuff. They're very resourceful. They just have so many things out of their control. God forbid something happens, and we're all going to pass. That's a given. We just don't know when. I think statistically, it's amazingly how high that number is of farmers that want to transfer the farm to the next generation and just haven't found the time to set up the plan because
Right.
it's not a small thing to do. It's a big thing for them to undertake. And talking to farmers that have done it, they talked about, that wasn't easy. That was painful, but they got it done. And then then they're in a much better position to start, thinking about how do I transfer this effectively, keep it fair, because it's never going to be equitable when you got multiple, children that you're working with. And so it becomes a big task. And I think, well, we all know that this concept will make that transition much easier. It provides capital that wasn't there before. It's a simple keystroke when somebody sets up, a policy and gets it all approved, they're creating money. God forbid something happens, and we're all going to pass. That's a given. We just don't know when. So it can create a lot of solutions for families for that transition to the next generation. So I think that's one thing I love about the book. We've got lots of additional resources to help people, farm families, to make a difference, not only today, but for tomorrow. And the other thing that I always think about when I think about farmers, and and I know it's in the book too, it's like farmers, you mentioned it, Richard, they're very resourceful. And they always, and people are always left with, well, how am I gonna, in order to do this, I have to pay premiums into a policy. How am I going to do that? Well, farmers figure out how to do stuff. They're very resourceful. So they can set their mind about it and then have a good conversation with, you know, with with our team about how could I do this? We're going to look into their, business and we're going to help them with that. How could you do this? Because yeah, if you go to plant a crop, you plan on planting that crop in that field, you're going to find a way to get the seed to do that. And so it does take, it does take that kind of a mindset. I'm going to seed that crop. I'm going to put that crop in there. And that's the same thing with this. When you think about what they're doing, it's really not a lot different. When they're renting more land so that they can grow more crop, it's really aligns very well with what farmers do, and that's just building an asset that's going to grow capital versus something else.
Look, we want your family to have more money. That's our goal. That's our job. At Wealth on Main Street, our goal is to have you keep as much of that hard-earned capital where it belongs, with the people you love and care about. Easy way to do that, pick up a copy of this book, Don't Spread the Wealth. This book is all about keeping the money in the family. Think of it like an aquarium. The money never leaves, and you can use it and reuse it as many times as possible. Go ahead and pick up a copy today at don'tspreadwealth.com.
Stress is a big part of farmers' lives. They just have so many things out of their control. And what IBC does is just, it starts, over time, it changed that narrative where, you know, they're not stressed if, they all want a good outcome when they seed that plant that crop or, have those livestock that they're growing, they're all looking for a good outcome. That's how they go into it. It's a kind of interesting mindset. They think about it from a positive perspective. That's what I see in farmers. This is going to help, this is going to work and it's going to work well. But they also know that things can and will happen that are out of their control. So if they have this buffer that's there when something like that happens and all of a sudden, they could get access to that 200,000 that they need because of that need, and they don't have the pressure of, okay, now I got to pay that off in 6 months or a year because they built that access. And if it took them, 2 years before they got around to paying that off, no one's going to ask them, when are you going to pay that off? They have that flexibility that buffer that's there to help them through those periods of times where they would be struggling to figure out, okay, now how do I deal with the fact that that hailstorm came through and took all that out, and I probably should have had more hail insurance than I have, because and those are the things they deal with, and they can't protect from everything. Some of those things are easier to protect from, and other ones aren't. It's like, influences from government that we've seen in Canada this year, where all of a sudden, the commodity price in one product that's growing a lot in Western Canada changes drastically because of some, you know, political decision out of their control.
I think you were going to say a boneheaded
Yeah,
decision, right?
yeah, it was, because it's really, I don't know if we were buying any of those electric cars from China, and so I don't think we were. And all of a sudden, that was a factor that was put out there, and then canola prices just dropped drastically after that market changed because of tariffs from just political games out there. Well, if you're that farmer, you're feeling the stress of that price change. Now,
100%.
if you had that access, that built up access to capital for a buffer, it just gives you the chance to breathe.
And knowing that you don't have to drain every resource that you have in order to get through that period of time, while also making sure that the farm is still protected with, again, proper insurance coverage. It's, the picture in my mind, Dan, is like a pressure relief valve.
Yeah.
Enjoyed this conversation? Watch the full conversation by clicking right here. Or if you want to see more amazing clips just like this, go ahead and click here.